There is a moment in every person's life when they realize the future isn't waiting somewhere out there. It's being built quietly, consistently, invisibly by what they choose to focus on every single day. Your future is not shaped by luck, talent, or circumstance. It is shaped by attention. What you lock your mind onto becomes the blueprint of the life you end up living. If you focus on fear, fear becomes your world. If you focus on doubt, doubt becomes your ceiling. If you focus on excuses, excuses become the bars of a cage you built yourself. But the moment you focus on vision, on purpose, on possibility, your world expands. Doors appear where walls once existed. Strength rises where insecurity once lived. Your focus is the sculptor of your destiny. Life is always speaking, but your focus decides what you hear. Some people hear opportunity in chaos. Others hear chaos in opportunity. Some see a challenge and lean in. Others see the same challenge and step back. The difference isn't ability, it's focus. The way you direct your mind determines the meaning of every moment you face. Every great transformation begins with a shift in focus. When you stop staring at what's missing and start paying attention to what's within you, your confidence changes. When you stop obsessing over what you can't control and start focusing on what you can, your power returns. When you stop replaying old mistakes and start focusing on new possibilities, your future opens. Whatever you feed, your focus grows. Feed it negativity, and you will walk through life with a heavy heart. Feed it possibility, and you will walk through life with fire. The mind is always responding to your attention. It will build you a prison or a pathway depending on the direction you give it. The world is filled with people who never reached their potential, not because they lacked talent, but because they kept their focus locked on the wrong things. What hurt them, who left them, what scared them, what they didn't have. They watered the weeds and wondered why their life didn't bloom. But the moment you shift your focus, you shift your life. Focus on growth and you'll outgrow what once intimidated you. Focus on purpose and distractions lose their hold. Focus on your next step instead of the entire staircase and progress becomes possible again. The mind can be your greatest ally or your loudest enemy, and the deciding factor is what you choose to focus on. Your future is already reacting to your attention. Every time you choose discipline over comfort, the future shifts. Every time you choose belief over doubt, the future shifts. Every time you choose vision over fear, the future shifts. You do not need to know exactly how everything will unfold. You just need to focus on the direction, not the distance. Focus on the identity, not the intimidation. Focus on becoming, not comparing. People often say the future is uncertain, but that's only half true. The details are uncertain, yes, but the direction, that's up to you. Your focus is steering your life whether you realize it or not. You can live reactive, chasing distractions and fighting battles that drain your spirit, or you can live intentional, using your focus like a spotlight to illuminate the path that leads to your highest potential. Your future is not something you meet, it's something you make. And you make it through the thoughts you nurture, the perspectives you strengthen, and the truths you choose to believe. Wherever your focus goes, your energy follows. Wherever your energy flows, your results grow. If you want a future that inspires you, empowers you, elevates you, then aim your focus at what builds you rather than what breaks you. Because at the end of your life, you won't be shaped by who doubted you, who left you, or what tried to stop you. You will be shaped by what you chose to focus on in the middle of it all. Your focus is the author. Your life is the story. Choose wisely what you give your attention to, because that is the direction your future will rise. Your inner dialogue sets the direction of your life because it is the silent force that shapes how you interpret the world, how you respond to challenges, and how high you allow yourself to rise long before you take a step, make a decision, or attempt anything meaningful. You have already rehearsed it in your mind. You have already negotiated with yourself what is possible and what is not. The words you speak internally don't just float around in your head. They carve mental pathways that you eventually walk upon in your everyday choices. Most people underestimate the power of this inner conversation. They think thoughts are harmless, invisible, private. But thoughts are seeds, and seeds grow. If you plant doubt, you get hesitation. Plant fear, you get avoidance. Plant negativity, you get paralysis. But when you plant belief, courage, and clarity, they begin to move you toward a completely different future. Your inner dialogue becomes a compass. It points toward your potential or toward your limitations, depending on what you allow to dominate it. Your life is not shaped solely by circumstances. Two people can experience the same setback. One sees it as an ending, the other as a beginning. The difference is not in the event, it is in their internal interpretation. Your mind is constantly asking, what does this mean? And your inner voice is the one giving the answer. When your inner dialogue is filled with defeat, you interpret every obstacle as a sign that you are not enough. But when your inner dialogue is filled with determination, the same obstacle becomes proof that you are being prepared for greater things. Think about how often your internal voice has talked you out of opportunities. How many times it has convinced you to play small, to stay comfortable, to wait until you feel ready. That voice can be persuasive, especially when it speaks in the familiar tone of your fear. But that same voice can be trained. It can be reshaped. It can be redirected toward the person you want to become instead of the person your past taught you to be. When you change your inner dialogue, you don't just change your mindset, you change the entire direction of your life. Your inner dialogue is constantly writing the script of your future actions. If the script says you're capable, you attempt more. If the script says you're adaptable, you endure more. If the script says you're worthy, you expect more from life. And when you expect more, you behave differently. You walk differently. You make decisions with a different level of confidence. You pursue possibilities that once seemed out of reach. You become someone who refuses to settle for a life that doesn't reflect your true potential. But it takes awareness to break free from the old script. Most of the thoughts running through your mind didn't originate from you. They came from the voices that influenced you, parents, teachers, failures, criticism, the past version of yourself. Without realizing it, you may still be living under the weight of words that were spoken years ago. And here you are, grown, powerful, talented, but still guided by an outdated narrative. When you begin to challenge that narrative, you begin to reclaim the direction of your life. You start replacing "I can't" with "I will learn," "Oh, I'm not ready" with "I'm preparing," "I'm afraid" with "Oh, becoming stronger." These small shifts in language lead to massive shifts in identity. Your life moves in the direction of your strongest thoughts because those thoughts eventually shape your belief system. A belief is just a thought you've repeated enough times that it feels like truth. So imagine what happens when you repeatedly speak strength into your inner world. Imagine what happens when your internal voice becomes your ally instead of your enemy. You begin to see possibilities you never saw before. You begin to recognize doors instead of walls. You begin to move with a sense of purpose instead of a sense of survival. Every day, Your inner dialogue is either pushing you toward your destiny or pulling you back into your history. It is quietly sculpting your confidence, your habits, your expectations, and your willingness to pursue the life you dream of. When you understand that this inner voice holds the steering wheel, you become intentional about the words you allow to take root in your mind. What you consistently focus on becomes your emotional reality, because the mind is always creating meaning from what it pays attention to. Your focus acts like a magnifying glass. Whatever you place it on grows larger, stronger, and more emotionally powerful. Two people can be in the same moment, in the same room, facing the same circumstances, but experience completely different emotions because each person is focused on a different element of that moment. One may be aware of what's missing while the other is aware of what's possible. One sees weakness, the other sees potential. The external world hasn't changed, but their internal world is living in two different emotional climates created by their focus. When you consistently focus on problems, your mind becomes trained to feel pressure. It starts looking for what's wrong even when nothing is wrong. Your emotions then follow the direction of that focus, tightening your chest, increasing worry, and creating a sense of heaviness that has nothing to do with your actual life and everything to do with what your mind is choosing to highlight. The brain has something called the reticular activating system, a filter that decides what's important. Whatever you focus on repeatedly, the brain marks as significant and begins to search for more of it. If you focus on stress, it will show you more reasons to feel stressed. If you focus on gratitude, it will show you more reasons to be grateful. Your emotional reality is shaped by what your mind believes deserves your attention. This is why two people can respond so differently to the same setback. One focuses on the failure and feels defeated. The other focuses on the lesson and feels motivated. The same event, but completely different emotional realities. When you put your attention on fear, you will feel anxiety. When you put your attention on possibilities, you will feel hope. When you put your attention on what you can't control, you will feel powerless. When you put your attention on what you can control, you will feel empowered. Your emotions are not random reactions, they are reflections of your focus. Think about the times in your life when a small issue felt overwhelming. It wasn't the size of the issue that made it heavy. It was the amount of focus you gave it. You replayed it, analyzed it, magnified it. Your mind kept bringing it back, and your emotions responded as if it were happening over and over again. The event happened once, but your focus made you relive the emotional impact repeatedly. In the same way, think about moments when you felt deeply inspired or confident. That feeling wasn't accidental. You were focused on your strengths, your opportunities, your vision, and your mind expanded those feelings until they became your emotional atmosphere. Your focus becomes the lens through which you interpret reality. If your lens is focused on negativity, you will interpret neutral situations as threats. If your lens is focused on growth, you will interpret challenges as stepping stones. When you focus on what's lacking, your emotional reality becomes scarcity. When you focus on what's present, your emotional reality becomes appreciation. The world doesn't have to change for your emotional reality to shift. Your focus simply needs to aim at a different part of the world. The emotions you live with daily are not accidents. They are built through repetition. Focus on anger, and anger becomes your default state. Focus on calmness, and calmness becomes your natural response. Focus on self-criticism, and you begin to live inside a reality where you never feel enough. Focus on self-respect, and you begin to live inside a reality where you feel deserving of more. The direction of your focus determines the climate of your mind, and the climate of your mind determines the quality of your life. Your emotional reality is created one thought at a time, one moment of attention at a time. Even in difficult seasons, what you choose to focus on can elevate your emotional state. You can focus on pain or purpose. You can focus on what broke you or what built you. You can focus on what you lost or what you can still create. The focus you choose becomes the emotion you live. Every feeling that dominates your life, whether peace, fear, gratitude, anxiety, joy, stress, or hope, is not just a reaction, but a construction. Your mind is always building. Your focus is always instructing. And your emotional reality is always the result of what you choose to magnify again and again. Your thoughts either build momentum or create resistance, because every idea you entertain becomes a force that pushes you forward or pulls you back. Before any action is taken, before any habit is formed, before any change is made, there is a thought that initiates it. That thought either tells you go or stop, move or wait, or grow or hide. And with repetition, these thoughts begin to accumulate power. They become the internal fuel that propels you, or the invisible weight that slows you down. Momentum begins in the mind long before it shows up in your results. When your thoughts support your goals, your mind shifts into motion. You feel a natural pull toward action. Ideas flow, energy increases, your confidence rises. You start seeing opportunities instead of obstacles. You stop procrastinating because your internal dialogue aligns with the direction you want to move. A single empowering thought can create a chain reaction. Clarity leads to action. Action leads to progress. Progress builds belief. Belief generates more momentum. Suddenly, you're moving not because you're forcing yourself, but because your thinking has created an internal current that carries you forward. But the opposite is also true. Some thoughts create resistance, the kind that slows you down even when you desperately want to move. Resistance doesn't always appear as fear or panic. Sometimes it disguises itself as logic, caution, or realism. It whispers things like, "You're not ready. This is too much. What if you fail?" Those thoughts tighten your energy, weaken your confidence, and drain your enthusiasm. They interrupt your flow, convincing you to pause, overthink, and second guess yourself. It's not the circumstances creating the resistance. It's the thoughts you've rehearsed about those circumstances. The human mind is constantly predicting the future based on the thoughts you give the most attention. When your thoughts are aligned with progress, your mind starts preparing you to move. It anticipates success. It looks for solutions. It expects growth. That expectation becomes momentum. But when your dominant thoughts predict difficulty, embarrassment, or failure, your mind starts preparing you to protect yourself. It anticipates danger. It looks for reasons to hold back. It expects setbacks. And that expectation becomes resistance. Momentum is built one thought at a time. You don't launch into transformation through willpower alone. You build emotional velocity through repeated beliefs that support your direction. Think about how you feel when you wake up with purpose. Your mind says, "Today is mine." That single thought shapes your posture, your decisions, your conversations. It makes you move faster, think sharper, and pursue your tasks with intensity. You step into your day with a sense of motion already in you. On the other hand, when the first thought you have is, "I'm already behind, I don't think I can handle this," your body slows, your actions lose urgency, your energy drops, your entire day becomes heavier because resistance has already settled into your mind. The thoughts you repeatedly entertain create either an internal push or an internal pull. A push moves you toward your highest potential. A pull drags you back into old habits, old fears, old patterns. Every meaningful change in your life requires inner momentum. And inner momentum begins with choosing thoughts that support the direction you want to go instead of the direction you are afraid of. Even small thoughts matter. A simple shift from "this is hard" to "this is preparing me" turns resistance into momentum. A shift from "I'm overwhelmed" to "I can take the next step" turns paralysis into movement. A shift from "I always mess up" to "I'm learning faster than before" turns self-doubt into strength. Your mind is always listening to the instructions your thoughts provide. If your thoughts speak limitation, your mind contracts. If your thoughts speak vision, your mind expands. Contracted thinking slows everything down. Your hope, your confidence, your creativity. Expanded thinking speeds everything up. It opens doors inside you that you didn't even know were closed. The quality of your thoughts determines the speed at which your life moves. You build momentum by feeding your mind thoughts that ignite motion. You create resistance by feeding it thoughts that cultivate hesitation. And the remarkable thing is that you control which direction you build. Even in moments of fear, you can choose a thought that keeps you leaning forward. Even in moments of doubt, you can choose a thought that keeps you from stopping completely. Your thoughts are never neutral. They are either clearing the path or cluttering it. They are either accelerating your growth or competing against it. Every thought is a step toward momentum or a step toward resistance, and the direction you choose decides the distance you travel. Self-belief must be spoken before it is ever lived, because every transformation in your life begins with a declaration, not a result. Before confidence becomes visible, before success becomes tangible, before strength becomes recognizable, it exists first as words you speak to yourself. These words act as the foundation of your identity, shaping how you see yourself long before the world sees anything at all. Nothing powerful begins fully formed. It begins as language, spoken, repeated, affirmed, until it becomes part of who you are. You cannot live a life you haven't first convinced your mind you deserve. Self-belief is not something you stumble into by accident. It is something you intentionally cultivate through the conversations you have with yourself. The mind listens to your voice more than anyone else's. When you speak strength, your mind begins to build strength. When you speak capability, your mind begins to search for evidence of capability. When you speak possibility, your mind opens the door to new actions. Every word you repeat becomes a signal to your brain about the type of person you are becoming. Most people wait for proof before believing in themselves. They wait for results, achievements, or validation before claiming confidence. But confidence doesn't work that way. You speak it first, and the evidence follows. You declare, "I am capable," even when you feel unsure. You say, "I deserve more," even when your circumstances don't reflect it yet. You speak, "I can do this," even while your hands are shaking. These spoken beliefs are not lies, they are instructions. They tell your mind where to grow, what to become, what to rise into. Your words create identity, and identity shapes behavior. If you tell yourself you're not enough, your actions shrink to match that belief. If you tell yourself you can't change, you will stop trying. If you tell yourself you always fail, you will avoid opportunities that could prove otherwise. The opposite is also true. When you speak belief, you begin behaving like someone who believes. You take risks you wouldn't have taken. You endure challenges you wouldn't have tolerated. You push through discomfort you once avoided. Little by little, your actions catch up to the identity you have spoken into existence. The most powerful transformations happen long before the world sees them because they happen internally. They happen in moments when you decide to speak truth louder than your fears. You say it when nothing in your life supports it. You say it when your past contradicts it. You say it when the people around you don't understand it. Speaking belief is not about pretending, it is about planting. You plant words that grow into confidence, grow into courage, grow into new patterns. Your life expands in the direction of the language you repeatedly use. Think about how many people carry brilliance inside them, but never speak to themselves like someone who can rise. They speak to themselves with doubt, apology, and hesitation. Their inner language keeps them locked in old versions of themselves. But the moment you shift your language, you shift your life. When you speak belief, your voice becomes the sound of permission. Permission to grow, permission to try, permission to fail forward, permission to break old patterns, permission to rise into the future waiting for you. Self-belief is spoken in quiet rooms, early mornings, late nights, moments when you're alone with your thoughts. It's spoken when nobody is cheering, when nobody is watching. When nothing is guaranteed, you speak it because your soul needs to hear it. You speak it because your future depends on it. You speak it because silent dreams never survive in a loud world. You speak it because every version of you that has ever grown started with a sentence, a decision, a whisper of belief. You don't need to feel ready to speak belief. You don't need to feel confident. You don't need to have the answers. You speak it in imperfect faith. You speak it in uncertainty. You speak it because the spoken word becomes the lived reality. The language of self-belief is the beginning of every breakthrough, every reinvention, every chapter of greatness. When you speak belief, you are building the person you are becoming even before you fully meet them. Focus transforms challenges into opportunities because the meaning you assign to any difficulty is shaped by where your attention goes. Every challenge presents two possible realities, one where you feel stuck, defeated, and overwhelmed, and another where you feel resourceful, capable, and prepared for growth. The difference isn't the challenge itself, but the lens through which you approach it. When your focus is locked on fear, inconvenience, or frustration, the challenge becomes heavier. But when your focus is directed toward solutions, lessons, and possibilities, the challenge becomes a stepping stone rather than a stumbling block. Your focus determines what part of the challenge becomes most important. If you concentrate on what's going wrong, your emotions will tighten, your creativity will shut down, and your energy will drop. You'll begin to see the challenge as an obstacle that blocks your path. But if you choose to focus on what the challenge is trying to teach you, every difficulty becomes a doorway. You start seeing what can be improved, what can be strengthened, what can be learned. Suddenly, the same challenge that once felt overwhelming becomes motivation for growth. Challenges are neutral until your mind interprets them. A setback can either convince you that you're failing or push you to find a better strategy. A disappointment can either make you bitter or make you wiser. A delay can either frustrate you or refine your patience. The challenge itself is not the determining factor, it's your focus. When you focus on what you can control instead of what you can't, your emotions stabilize and your thinking becomes clearer. You begin to access perspectives that remain hidden when your attention is scattered or negative. Your focus activates different parts of your brain depending on where it is placed. When you focus on fear or frustration, your mind enters survival mode, narrowing your possibilities. You become reactive instead of strategic. But when you focus on solutions, creativity awakens. Your brain starts scanning for options, alternatives, and angles you didn't notice before. This shift in focus turns mental blocks into breakthroughs. Innovation doesn't come from ideal conditions. It comes from minds that know how to focus on possibility even when circumstances are difficult. Every successful person shares one trait: they have learned to redirect their focus in moments of pressure. They don't deny challenges or pretend problems don't exist. Instead, they manage their attention with intention. They focus on what they can build, not what they can't control. They look for the lesson hidden inside the discomfort. They pay attention to what the challenge is making them become. This shift in perspective allows them to move forward instead of getting stuck. The challenge becomes a catalyst. Sometimes a challenge exposes weaknesses you didn't know you had, not to shame you, but to prepare you. When your focus is on improvement rather than frustration, those weaknesses become areas of growth. Challenges often reveal strengths you never realized were in you. When your focus is on resilience, you recognize how capable you truly are. Without challenges, many of your greatest abilities would remain dormant. Focus is what decides whether those abilities emerge or stay hidden. Challenges can also sharpen your clarity. When everything is easy, you don't question your habits, your direction, or your decisions. But when difficulty hits, your focus naturally shifts to what matters most. You start identifying priorities, cutting distractions, and paying attention to what truly deserves your energy. In this way, a challenge has the power to refine your purpose, not just your skill set. Focus helps you use hardship as a refining fire rather than a destructive one. Even the emotional impact of a challenge is determined by focus. When you focus on how far you have to go, you feel overwhelmed. When you focus on how far you've already come, you feel inspired. When you focus on what you've lost, your spirit becomes heavy. When you focus on what you can build next, your spirit becomes strong. Focus doesn't change the challenge, but it changes your experience of the challenge. Opportunities are often disguised inside moments of pressure, but you only recognize them when your attention is trained to look beyond the surface. A setback can lead you to a new skill, a new perspective, or a new path you never would have explored otherwise. A difficult season can develop qualities like patience, discipline, and resilience that become invaluable later in life. Focus is the key that unlocks these hidden gifts. In every challenge, your focus is either shrinking your possibilities or expanding them. It is either magnifying the problem or magnifying the potential. By choosing your focus wisely, you turn difficulties into teachers, setbacks into strategies, and obstacles into opportunities. Master your internal conversation and you master your future, because every step you take, every risk you attempt, every dream you decide to pursue is filtered through the words you speak to yourself. Long before the world ever sees your progress, your mind has already debated it, questioned it, challenged it, or encouraged it. Your internal conversation becomes the quiet architect behind your choices. It sets the boundaries of what feels possible and the elevation of what you believe you deserve. When that inner dialogue is disciplined and intentional, your life moves with clarity. When it is chaotic and filled with doubt, your life moves with hesitation. Your internal conversation is the first voice you hear at the beginning of the day and the last voice you hear before you sleep. It decides whether you rise with purpose or stumble into your morning with dread. It decides whether challenges feel manageable or overwhelming. It decides whether you walk into opportunities with confidence or shrink from them in fear. Most people try to change their life by altering their external circumstances, but the real transformation begins with mastering the unseen voice within. The future doesn't respond to your wishes, it responds to your internal language. Every dream you have requires a version of you that speaks differently to yourself. You can want a better life. But if your voice constantly whispers limitations, you will always feel trapped in the same patterns. Internal mastery begins with becoming aware of how you speak to yourself when pressure rises, when plans fail, when doubt creeps in. Do you encourage yourself or criticize yourself? Do you speak solutions or amplify problems? Do you tell yourself you're capable, or do you remind yourself of every past mistake? That internal pattern will either accelerate your growth or sabotage it before it even begins. Your future depends on the tone of the voice inside your mind. A mind that speaks with belief becomes bold. A mind that speaks with fear becomes timid. A mind that speaks with clarity becomes stable. A mind that speaks with confusion becomes scattered. Your internal conversation influences your energy, your decisions, your confidence, and your sense of identity. Identity is built through repeated self-talk. If you tell yourself often enough that you are resilient, you behave with resilience. If you tell yourself often enough that you are unworthy, you behave accordingly. Who you become is shaped by the script you rehearse daily. Mastering your internal conversation doesn't mean ignoring negative thoughts. It means learning how to redirect them. It's about taking control of the narrative rather than letting old fears run it for you. When doubt appears, you challenge it with truth. When fear rises, you meet it with clarity. When insecurity starts speaking, you answer with purpose. This is mental leadership, choosing what voice will dominate your mind. If you don't lead your inner world, it will lead you in directions you don't want to go. A mastered internal conversation gives you the ability to stay centered when life becomes turbulent. It allows you to respond instead of react. It keeps your vision intact even when circumstances are shaking. It enables you to persevere through seasons that would crush someone whose internal dialogue is filled with chaos. People who handle adversity well are not lucky. They are disciplined in how they speak to themselves during difficult moments. Their inner world is anchored even when the outer world is unstable. Your future is shaped by countless small decisions, and each of those decisions is shaped by your internal state. That state is created through words. If your words are filled with encouragement, direction, and discipline, you act boldly. If they are filled with hesitation, excuses, and fear, you hold back. Mastery of your future is not about controlling everything around you. It's about controlling the internal world that interprets everything around you. Think about how many breakthroughs are delayed because of inner dialogue that says, I'm not ready, I'm not good enough, or what if I fail? These thoughts become invisible anchors, dragging down your potential. But when your internal conversation begins to sound like, I am growing, I am capable, I deserve progress, those same anchors turn into engines. Your mind begins to push you forward instead of pulling you back. The path in front of you becomes clear because your internal voice is no longer clouded by fear. Mastering your internal conversation also means recognizing the difference between truth and emotion. Feelings fluctuate, but truth remains steady. You may feel incapable, but the truth is that you have overcome challenges before. You may feel overwhelmed, but the truth is that you can take one step at a time. You may feel unqualified, but the truth is that growth happens through action, not perfection. When you train your internal voice to speak truth louder than temporary emotion, your future becomes stable, focused, and grounded. Your internal conversation is the steering wheel of your life. It decides your direction long before your actions follow. When that conversation becomes disciplined, intentional, and aligned with who you want to become, your future begins to open, expand, and rise to meet you.